If you have to cram for an exam, this is what I would recommend. And I'm going to break this down with the assumption that you're giving yourself anywhere between 24 to 48 hours to prepare for this exam. I'm also going to preface this by saying that yes, this is going to suck ass. You're going to be tired. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to feel annoyed. It comes with the cramming territory. So you just got to own it, suck it up, do what you got to do. And then for the love of God, watch the other videos on my YouTube channel so that you do not end up here for every single exam. So let's get into this. Okay, so outside of gathering all of the material, the first place that you want to start is if you have a practice exam or a study guide that your professor gave you or that you have access to for whatever reason, I want you to start there. If you do not have a study guide or a practice exam, then you get to create your own. And the way that you're going to do this is you're just going to use the chapter or PowerPoint objectives to create basically like a checklist for yourself that clearly lists out for you the topics, the things, the types of problems that you're going to have to know, be able to solve, and create for the actual exam. And the reason why we're doing this is so that you have a gauge on how prepared you are for the exam. That's the reason why we are using either the practice exam or study guide, or you're creating your own so that you know what to expect. And for example, if the objective says be able to identify X, Y, and Z, you know that in your studying, you need to make sure that you have those examples ready to be able to put into a essay prompt or multiple choice or fill in the blank or whatever it is. Okay, so that's step one, is if you have a study guide or if you have a practice exam, please start there. If you do not have a study guide or a practice exam that was given to you, you are going to create one for yourself using either the chapter objectives or the PowerPoint objectives. If you're not sure which ones to use because they're not the same, most likely they will be the same. The first thing that I would do is I would compare and contrast them to see if they are the same. If they are the same, it really doesn't matter. If they're different, then go with what the professor said the content is going to be coming from, because he or she probably let you know that. Okay, so step two. For the first 1 to 2 hours of your study session, you're going to try and see if you can answer the questions or recall the topics correctly from memory without your notes in front of you. You want to try and complete the study guide or the practice exam without your notes in front of you, if you have access to one. And the reason why we're doing this is so that we know, what do I already know and where are my knowledge gaps? Make sure that you're keeping track of what you're getting wrong or what you couldn't recall or what you didn't answer correctly or what you didn't know how to answer, because those are your knowledge gaps, and those are the things that you're going to want to really focus on during these 48 hours that we're cramming for this exam. So once you're done taking the practice exam or trying to answer those objectives from memory or trying to answer the prompts on the study guide from memory, you're going to want to take at least a 30-minute break. Let your brain kind of work on something else. Go watch 30 minutes of a Netflix show. As long as you're not going to get sucked into it, go for a 30-minute walk. Just take a mental break where you're not using your brain to think. You're going to come back, and the rest of your study time, you're going to break it up into 50-minute sessions with a 10-minute break, making sure to take a 30-minute break after 2 50-minute sessions. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again so that you get it. So for the rest of the study time, however long you plan on studying, you're going to do 50 minutes of studying. You're going to give yourself a 10-minute break. And when you do the 50 and 10 minute 2 times, you're going to give yourself a longer break, 30 minutes to an hour. And then you're going to repeat the cycle for as many hours as you desire to continue studying. During those 50-minute chunks of time that you're studying, you're going to be focusing on learning the concepts, the topics, the problems that you got wrong, that you realize, crap, I don't know this. I have no idea how to solve for this. And the way that you're going to do that is by either reading about it in the chapter that you were supposed to read, or watching a video on it, or actually going and listening to the lecture that you probably didn't listen to or didn't pay attention to the first time around. And you're going to want to just constantly be checking in with yourself to make sure that you understand what's going on. And what this looks like is you're reading a section and you're like, okay, so this section is talking about X, Y, and Z. And X, Y, and Z is important because of blah, blah, blah. And some of the ways that I might see this show up on an exam is blah, blah, blah. You're making these connections. You're talking through this out loud. I have an entire video on this YouTube channel about like how to actually learn shit, like how to actually get things to go into your brain. And it has nothing to do with taking notes. It's the thinking that you do. It's this reflecting. It's this talking out loud. It's you asking yourself questions, asking yourself what you understand, asking yourself, how might this show up on an exam? How might this relate to whatever we were talking about last week? That whole process is what helps you to learn it, retain it, and then be able to recall it on the actual exam. So if you are solving equations, say for chemistry or physics or a calculus class or something like that, this check-in process would look like you walking yourself through the steps. Okay, here's this word problem. I know that I'm supposed to use this type of equation on this word problem because X, Y, and Z. And what I need to do to solve for this equation is I need to find this and I need to find that and I need to plug this in here and then I need to do this and then I need to do this. And how I know the answer is correct is because blah, blah, blah. That's what that process looks like, okay? So, during these 50-minute chunks, again, you're learning about the concept, you're talking about it out loud, you're making the connections with yourself as you're reading or watching the lecture video on it, etc. I do not want you to get caught up in trying to take a bunch of notes, okay? You do not have time for that at this point. Like, that should have been done. And this, I tell my students 72 hours before the exam should just be focused on you quizzing and filling in knowledge gaps. Like, your notes should have been done ahead of time. So if you find yourself at this point and you haven't written any notes, you haven't done any of the reading, please, do not even worry about trying to get caught up on the notes. Focus in on getting your brain to ask yourself questions to try to understand what the hell is going on in this class, to get yourself to understand what this topic is, how it's relevant to the point of this class, because that's all you're going to get tested on your actual exam. And you might have to get creative with how you're getting this information, right? So if you don't have time to take notes and this exam is pure memorization, this is where you go on Quizlet and you search up the exact name of your class at your school and hope that someone's already created a slide deck on it so that you can just print it out and start quizzing yourself on it. You're going to have to see if your book comes with chapter summaries if you don't have time to read the entire chapter at this point. You're going to have to see if the book comes with online resources that can help you to condense the information. Search on YouTube to see if there are any people out there who are doing shorter lectures on these topics. Khan Academy, same thing. Try to see if there are 15-minute videos on the topic, because at this point, time is of the essence. What you really want to focus on is learning this information in the shortest amount of time as possible. And what's going to help with that is letting go of trying to write perfect notes, letting go of trying to write any notes, and really just focusing on using your brain to try to understand. And again, what I mean when I say that is you're just asking yourself questions. What is this? What does this mean? How is it relevant? How might it show up on the exam? What does this remind me of? Is there a better way for me to explain it to myself so that I can remember it better? That process is what actually helps you to retain the information. It's not the note-taking. Again, I explain why this is important in my note-taking video, so you can go and watch that if you want more detailed information on it. But I'm going to stick to this whole cramming thing, okay? So step 1 was to create your study guide, or to have a study guide and a practice test that was already given to you by your professor. Step 2 is to actually try to answer that from memory so that you can see where your knowledge gaps are. Step 3 is for you to actually fill in those knowledge gaps by understanding and learning the content which I just went over. And that's what day 1 of your studying is going to be about. The first 24 hours of you cramming is going to be all about making sense of this information. This is the learning of the information, okay? And that'll be the end of your day 1. Day 2 is the day that you are practicing, quizzing, and filling in any of the rest of the knowledge gaps that you might still have. And you might still have them if you're cramming. So the point of the quizzing, of the practicing, of you asking yourself questions out loud, trying to recall things from memory, is we're trying to make sure that you know what you're supposed to know. We're trying to figure out where you still have knowledge gaps. We're trying to help you to really hone in and be 1,000% sure that you're prepared for this exam with the amount of time it is that you have. That's why I had you create that checklist for yourself. So you're quizzing yourself. You're using back of the chapter questions and trying to answer those questions without your notes in front of you. You're trying to go through your Quizlet deck without your notes in front of you and seeing what you can recall. You're doing practice tests and practice problems and practice questions from wherever you can find it. Typically, I recommend for my students to go to the back of your textbook. You're going to find that information there. Or redo old homework assignments for calculus and for physics and for chemistry. Like, you have the resources to do this quizzing. You just got to use it. Khan Academy also has a lot of different practice tests for different majors and topics as well. So if you look for it, you will find it. But the only reason why we're doing this practice and quizzing is because it helps us to become familiar with what do we know and what don't we know. And we want to know what we don't know because we're going to spend the rest of day 2 making sure that those knowledge gaps get filled before we take the exam tomorrow. That's the whole reason why we're doing quizzing and recalling. Okay? And if you're finding that you don't know a lot of the information, this is a good thing because there's still time for you to do the work to learn it. Okay? So the way that you're going to learn it is the way that we learn anything. You're either going to read, you're going to watch another video, you're going to head to the PowerPoint and try to make sense of the information, you're going to sign up for last minute tutoring, you're going to do whatever you need to do to make sense of this information, to figure out how to solve problems, to figure out how to understand concepts. You're going to do the work. And that work is thinking. It's what is this? What do I understand? What don't I understand? What's confusing about this? How can I make it simpler? You answering those questions is what's going to help you to retain it, to learn it, retain it, and be able to recall it when you get to the actual exam, okay? And then that's going to be the end of your day 2. So again, just to recap so that you know what this looks like. On day 1, you're taking a practice test or you're using the study guide that you created or that your professor gave you, and you're just like doing a quick run through of trying to answer and see if you can explain these topics and know about these topics from the top of your head. And the reason why you're doing that is because you want to get a gauge for where you need to focus the bulk of your study time today. So once you understand, okay, these are the topics that I like really don't get, that I don't understand, that I don't know anything about, you're then going to spend the rest of your day 1 either watching a video, reading about it in the textbook, reading about it in the summary from the doing whatever you need to do to try to understand those concepts, try to understand how to solve those problems, when to use the equations, all of those things. Day 2, you're going to be doing a lot of testing, a lot of practice, a lot of quizzing yourself out loud, a lot of taking practice tests, a lot of back of the problem questions, wherever you can get your hands on opportunities for you to see what you know with your notes away so that you can further identify where your knowledge gaps on the topics that are going to be covered on the exam still are. That's the point of the quizzing. You're going to spend the rest of your day continuing to fill in those knowledge gaps. And then you're going to go to sleep at a decent time. A decent time is where you're getting at minimum of 6 hours of sleep. Staying up all night is not going to help you to do better on the exam. You will score lower. Your brain will not function at the capacity that it's able to function had you slept. So it's better that you have a solid enough understanding where you'll get a passing grade than for you to try to stay up all night trying to memorize every single detail so that you can get an A. Okay? Now's not the time for that, boo-boo. I'm so sorry. But this is what cramming is about sometimes. It's not about getting the top grade. It's about doing enough to pass, to get a decent enough grade, and then making sure that you do the work of creating an effective study plan, making sure that you have a balanced schedule and that you're sticking to it for the rest of the semester so that you do not find yourself in this same situation again. Like, cramming time is survival mode. You're just going to have to suck it up and do what you need to do, but you can do it strategically. You can do it in a way where you're still going to sleep at a decent hour, where there's actually a strategy in place that is going to help you to get the highest grade that you can, even if you are cramming. And if you have any further questions about this, or you were listening to me talk about this and you were wondering, like, what does she mean by thinking through? Go and watch the video that's on the screen right now about how to take notes. It's like note-taking 101 or something like that, because I teach you about the thinking process in that. The thinking process is the most important thing about taking notes. The thinking process is what creates the neural pathways in your brain to learn the information, retain it, and then be able to recall it when you need to, which is when you're answering questions on an exam.